On today's show, we discuss the NBA's plan to return, the best path for top high school talent to reach the NBA, and if Dak is worth what he wants from the Cowboys.
This man was a bona fide scrub.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the Bona Fide Scrubs podcast. We've appreciated you reviewing and rating our show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and for following us on social media. Okay, so the NBA is nearing a plan to resume its season in Disney World, and it appears a timeline has been presented to teams around the league. So Keith Smith on Twitter, he tweeted out what he says is a rough timeline that was mentioned to him from a team exec. So the timeline goes, in early June, the teams return back to their facilities. Mid to late June, camp begins. Early July is the travel to a single site. I assume that would be Disney World now that they've established that. Mid-July, the games begin. Labor Day, the season ends. Mid-September would be the draft. A week later is free agency. And Christmas time would be when the next season begins. So, Noah, do you like this plan? And do you think when do you think they'll actually officially release it?
Well, if they're going to be back in the facilities in early June, I assume the schedules will be coming out around that time. While in training camps in mid-June also, so it's going to come out around then. I feel like the league is going to establish how many regular season games they're playing because they need to play at least 70 to get the full, almost the full contract for each NBA player, and it looks like they're going to.
Yeah, I think it's I think they need to play 70 games for the local broadcasting contracts to be fulfilled.
Yes.
So I guess they will need to start at some point in the regular season again. They can't just skip right to the playoffs, which seems like it would be a smarter decision. It would save them a lot of time, but I guess they do need to fulfill these regional contracts for broadcasting.
So with about if they're going to play 70 regular season games and each team, let's say they need 10 more games, do you think it's worth it for crappier teams to bring back all their players or even their best players? Like, let's say, for example, the Wizards, they're out of the playoff race, it looks like. What would it be worth it to bring back Bradley Beal or their star players or something like that?
I don't know. I wonder if some of those players, whether they're stars or not, will hold out and say, forget this. My team, we're not competing for anything. We're just there to basically fulfill a contract. So I don't know if they'll have the choice to say like, nah, screw this. But it wouldn't surprise me if eventually, once this became an official proposal, that some players would start holding out.
Yeah, but teams like the Timberwolves, like Cat, I don't know. I think a lot of young players actually they want to play and they want to get their contract since a lot of these players don't make that much. A lot of young players that are on a rookie deals or like Trae Young, like he's not making that much. I think he's kind of sick of just sitting in his house and he wants to play the last 10 games and just like get some workouts in. I think that'd be good for them.
Right. I mean, it'd probably also be a bad look for some of these players to not come back because we've seen it in the MLB, certain players complaining about having to start the season and the safety precautions. So we've seen how that's turned out for them. So I wonder if the NBA players will look at that and realize, okay, yeah, we'll just bite the bullet and come back 10 games, whatever. That's not that hard to do.
Yeah, teams that are absolutely dead like the Knicks. I'm going to be watching those regular season games. They're probably going to lose all 10 of them or whatever they play, but I'm excited for that. As a Knicks fan, I'm looking forward to the draft in mid-September. That's kind of interesting during the NFL season.
Yeah, right.
And a week later is free agency.
Yeah, it's going to be really crazy how the next season is going to overlap with the start of the NFL season and baseball. Mid-September, getting into October, that starts the baseball playoffs. So if the MLB can get going, all these sports are going to all sort of peak at the same time. And it's going to be, we went so long with no news and nothing interesting going on. It's going to happen all at once. So that's going to be it might be overwhelming, but also exciting.
Yeah. I also read somewhere that in the Disney facilities, there's going to be games starting at noon and like playing all day since there's only a few gyms open. So it looks like we're going to see like maybe 7 games in a day, 5, 6 games in a
Right,
day, like a
like a
March
first weekend
Madness.
NCAA tournament
Yeah, that could be very
style.
interesting. But then again, I don't know. I mean, the TV ratings should be good because there is no basketball happening and there is no sports. So I feel like fans will be inclined to watch their favorite team play in a summer league gym, even though it may seem kind of boring, but with no fans.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be boring. I don't think people necessarily watch at home, but obviously for the fans. But when that starts coming into play, will be obviously the NBA playoffs, NBA finals. We'll start to see
Yeah.
that to have an effect and see there'll be no home court anymore.
Yeah.
There'll be no traveling, so the time will be pretty condensed. And you know, even if we get like a great historic moment in the finals, there's going to be nobody there live to watch it. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. In general, I just think that the NBA is handling this really well. They, after the coronavirus, the Gobert thing, that they shut down their league and all the other leagues followed. But it looks like they're gonna be playing games in July, which is great. And it doesn't really affect next season as much as you would think because the season starts on Christmas in December, which also is very good for TV ratings starting around that time when everyone's on vacation or at home. And the lockout season that we saw happen in, what was that, 2011 season or 2012, 2011, 2012, they played
Yeah.
66 games and it looks like players, they were fulfilled their contracts fully there. And I just think that the NBA is handling this well and we're going to get through this year with a champion and all the other things done. And the next season's going to start in Christmas. And then we'll go back into next year. And then when the 2021-2022 season starts, it's going to be back to normal, like nothing happened. So the NBA
Well,
is doing a good job there.
do you think that they should keep the schedule, start the season on Christmas normally?
Like every single year.
Yeah, every single year. This is the new schedule from now on.
No, I don't think so because 82 games is better than starting Christmas. I feel like starting Christmas is kind of late.
Well, no, it would still be 82 games. It would just
Oh, well,
it would
when do you
open
think the regular season would
Christmas
end?
whatever week. It would open Christmas week and then end. I don't know how long is the NBA season normally. How many months is it? 5 months?
From
No,
October
way more than
to
that.
April. It's more than 6 months. But I don't know. I
It
mean,
would be if it goes from October to June. It's 9 months. You would count for the finals.
yeah, I was just talking about regular season though. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I just like the NBA starting in October. That's when baseball is wrapping up. The NHL is starting then. It's just good to get the NBA's foot in there and start playing. Waiting till Christmas every year, that's interesting, but I don't know. I'd rather just start in October.
hmm.
For now, it's
Well,
good that they're starting the next season in December. It looks like
right. So I guess we'll have a shortened year next year, obviously, if they start on Christmas and don't
yes.
keep this format.
So Joe Ingles, one of the Utah Jazz players, one of his tweets got resurfaced, and he did say that apparently he said this 2 months ago to an Australian press. He said, "I'm prepared to walk away, fly to Australia, and never play another game in my life, and be very content with it." But that was when we had a lot less information about the coronavirus, and he debunked this tweet. He responded to people who were bringing this up, and it looks like he is ready to play and follow all the protocols. The NBA is making sure that everyone will be safe, and it looks like Ingles is going to be happy to play and earn his contract.
Right. Yeah. His team is going to be in the playoffs. That's why I brought it before that, will teams that are playing for essentially nothing, will certain players have that mentality now, even though, we learned a lot since Ingles made his initial comments. I don't know. If I was an NBA player and I needed to play 10 games and I wasn't going to make the playoffs, I don't see why I would want to, you know, go through whatever protocols they're going to need to go through with testing and screening and traveling, all this stuff, just to basically play for nothing. I don't know. I don't know how real players are going to feel about that.
Well, the NBA is essentially saying you got to play there in your contract. That's just the reality of it. And I think we're going to see all the teams back and be playing, and they're going to be happy to get their money because they already lost like 25% of their contract, I believe. Up until this point, they lost a lot of money. So I think, especially the playoff teams, they have an incentive, a real incentive to play because they're in the playoffs. They want to win a
Well, of course,
championship,
yeah,
and that helps their reputation and money too.
yeah. I mean, those players, the NBA players don't get paid for the playoffs anyway.
Yeah,
So,
they
I
don't.
mean, they're only going there to compete for a championship.
Yes, which is the best part about the sport. The NBA wants that to happen, and it looks like we're going to see that.
So things are moving on in the NBA, but in the MLB, that doesn't seem to be the case as the players and owners continue to basically to clash against each other for when and how they will start the season. We have no timeline for that as we do for the NBA, and I wonder if we're going to have an MLB season this year.
I think we do end up having one. If the NBA and NHL, they are going to, especially if the NFL, because the NFL, if you think about it, there's 53 players on each roster. So that's 106 players, not counting all the water boys, media people, reporters, cameramen, coaches, everything. So this is a large gathering, and if the NFL is going to happen, I don't see why couldn't the MLB attempt to play. And same with the other sports. The MLB needs money too. I don't think baseball players all want to sit out a season.
Well, in the NFL, the players tend to cave to what the owners want more often than I think probably in any of those four sports. So I think the players and owners in the NFL are on the same page, and I think by the time we get to September, whenever the NFL season is going to start, I think they'll have most of the stuff worked out. But with baseball, they have to get on the same page with each other first, which is a hurdle that the NFL and the NBA and these other leagues they don't have to worry about.
Yeah, I do think they will get on the same page. And I don't know when spring training is going to happen. It could happen in June, but the season, it looks like it could start in July if they come to an agreement soon. So we'll see baseball, the NBA, and hockey with their 24 team proposal all playing in July at the same time.
Right. What do you know anything about that 2014 proposal? Is that they're just going to leave out seven teams from coming back?
I don't know. I haven't read enough into that, but it seems like they want, I don't know, maybe seven teams aren't agreeing to what the NHL wants, but
Is it a 2014 playoff, or is it just 24 teams returning in general?
it looks like only 24 maybe want to return. I don't know. I haven't read all that completely yet, but which is weird. I mean, why would they leave off seven teams? It looks like with the NBA, we're getting all the teams back, and it looks like the players are going to agree to whatever the
Right.
owners and protocols say. So, okay, so with all the NBA talk of the season coming back, obviously the incoming players they have their own decisions to make. Well, not playing in the NBA, but a lot of high end basketball prospects are choosing the G League over college or going overseas. We saw Jalen Green, the number one shooting guard and the number one player in the nation, class of 2020. He's going to the G League to get paid and work out with NBA players and G League players. Same with Isaiah Todd. He decommitted from University of Michigan, which hurt Michigan fans, but he wants money, and a lot of these players are starting to believe that the G League is better preparation than college basketball. What do you think about that? That a lot of these players are dissing college.
Well, I think I think the NCAA is a little bit nervous about that because they obviously passed their rule to begin allowing college athletes to get paid. So I think they're starting to see the trend and notice it, and they need to get out in front of that as these top prospects move from uh, just seeing sort of one path to go to a top university. And with the basketball players, there's the G League. MLB players already forego their college eligibility to enter a minor league system.
Yeah.
So I think the trend is headed towards much more even, where players commit to these minor league systems over going to college.
I believe only in California actually they decide they want to pay their college athletes. But I don't think with that proposal that they're actually giving them a salary yet, right?
No,
Because
they're not. I think it allows endorsements and
yeah, I think
third
that's
party.
fine because does Zion really need that money from Duke? He probably got handed some money under the table, and like he drove so many ratings up, and he would be able to get endorsements in college. I think top players, maybe they'll be more inclined to stay in college or go to college from high school. But with the NBA recently, well, I know they've been talking not recently, but the past couple of years, but they want to hopefully bring back getting drafted out of high school because we see MLB do this, and the NBA they had this actually for a while. We saw Kobe get drafted, Kevin Garnett out of high school, and the NBA wants to bring this back because there's no point in being in college for a year. Like the NBA had that plan for a while, but then they canceled it because they felt like players weren't ready or they were becoming busts or whatever the reason was that David Stern decided to cancel that part. But looks like now, I mean, athletes are better than ever today. They're getting NBA trainers already working with them and stuff, and they're playing pickup games with NBA players. I saw a YouTube video. LaMelo was playing with Trey Young, Siakam, and all these players in just an LA gym. So so players out of high school are better than ever. Like Zion, do you really think he could have should have went to Duke last year? I don't think so. If he's averaging 22 points now, what does a year with Coach K do? Like,
Yeah, if I'm the NCAA, I would be pretty nervous about this because the NBA basically holds my fate entirely. They could decide that our to enter the league, you don't need to go to college, or you don't need those years of experience somewhere else before you get picked up by an NBA roster. So I think they sort of need to act now in terms of allowing players to get paid and incentivizing them to go to a college program, or else the NCAA is going to suffer in terms of basketball, I think.
yeah, that year of college is worthless to a lot of players, but I do enjoy seeing one and done prospects tear up the NCAA, like Trey Young, for example, or Zion and RJ. But like it does help with the ratings. But I don't think ratings will drop too much because college basketball it's ran by the blue bloods, and they'll always find kids that want to play more than 1 year in college. I mean, even if players will maybe high school prospects might want to still go to college and play a year or 2 years under a Hall of Fame coach such as Bill Self or Coach K or Roy Williams, get that extra experience, and then enter the league and get their contracts.
Right. I think if they're getting paid, it'll certainly help them make that decision.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I think the trend for the NCAA is good. And I think they need to continue. If it's really only in California, they need to expand that pretty quickly before the NBA and these other leagues basically get out in front of them.
It might be in a few. We might be a few years away from people getting drafted out of high school again. Ronnie James is a freshman, or he just was a freshman. He finished the year, but looks like his draft class or the year before him might be the first draft class we'll see. You can get drafted out of high school. They might bring that back. So that'd be 2022 season. And honestly, if you were a top high school prospect, Will, what do you think you would do in this situation? Would you go to the G League, even though it seems kind of boring? Well, I mean, it wouldn't be boring as you're playing basketball, but like you don't have the same hype around you as if you were playing for a college blue blood for a year, let's say, and on national
Yeah, I think
television.
I've got to measure all my options and see, will the college exposure and will the hype around college uh propel my draft class, even, because that, I think, if these players that have great runs in the NCAA tournament and things like that. That boosts their stock a lot. So it's just
Definitely.
a matter of getting noticed in the G League and getting noticed overseas versus a college program.
Yeah, I think if I was a top high school prospect, I still think I would end up attending college for a year because you're gonna look better if you're playing against college kids. You're gonna look better because if you go to the G League or an Australian Pro League, you might only average 8 points and be like a bench player, but you could be the man potentially of Duke or Kentucky or Kansas. You can show off on national television, and as you said, the tournament could propel your stock. With the G League, I feel like we saw players they could get lost in the shuffle there, like Darius Baisley. He was the 5-star recruit for Syracuse, and he decided last minute, I'm not going to Syracuse. I'm going to the G League to get paid and try to get an endorsement. So he did that. He ended up being, I don't know, I think he was a first round pick for the Thunder, but now he's just like a bench. He's just a rotation player. He doesn't play that often, and it hurt his stock. And maybe if he played at Syracuse, he would get a better contract, and teams would think more highly of him and play him more. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think you got to weigh money now and exposure now. And I think one could lead to another in a sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's the equation these players have to figure out as they make their choice.
Yeah, with LaMelo Ball, if you're as big as him, it really doesn't matter sometimes because we all know we've known him for about 4 or 5 years now. We've heard his father talk. We know about Lonzo and LiAngelo. So LaMelo, if you're as big as him, it really doesn't matter. Sometimes with the exposure because every NBA scout is going to be at his games in Australia. He had a pretty solid year. RJ Hampton was another player, obviously not as popular as LaMelo, but he was a solid player for a Australian team. He averaged 8 points. I don't know. Maybe his stock would be better if he played in college because there was rumors he was gonna go to Kansas. So maybe he would have averaged. Obviously, the coronavirus happened this year, but maybe he would have averaged like over 15 points, and maybe he could have been considered the number one pick. We don't know with the exposure, but it's just some things that athletes really now have to think about. Do they want the money immediately to help their families or whatever situation they're in, or do they want to take a not like a backseat but learn and take more in from a college coach and have more fun because college is a fun experience. It's probably more fun playing for a college team than it is for a G League team like nobody talks about.
Right. I think if you're looking at a player like LaMelo, he got exposure, money, and he still played at a high level. So I think if
Yeah.
you're confident in your abilities like that, and you're on a level like we've seen LaMelo Ball, I think that's when the G League overseas option will work for any of these young prospects because it didn't really hurt him. Is he's going to go top five, and would he be the number one pick if he went to college? I don't know, but he wouldn't. He still wouldn't have gotten. He wouldn't have gotten paid, and he's playing against, I would think, higher level competition playing in those leagues that he ended up playing in, as opposed to like a college league.
Yeah, the thing about the G League and Australia or wherever you play, maybe in Europe or Asia, these leagues have a lot more competition than college basketball because if you play for Duke, you play college teams, and half the teams you play aren't good. Like they play like Evansville sometimes, or like really bad conference teams. And Duke, those teams would not be able to be professional league teams. And so it's good for LaMelo and players like that, and Jalen Green per se. They are going into a professional environment. It's something like the NBA. They practice every day. It's like their job. They're around veterans. They're gonna learn to be a family with the team in the locker room, and they're gonna be getting paid. So like, if you are bad, then you're gonna be on the bench. Your coach is not gonna play you, and they're fighting for minutes with a bunch of 30-year-olds that are very motivated to get their next contract. So it's very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, you got to grow up a lot faster if you're going to play in a
Yeah,
professional league as opposed to in college. You don't get the kind of slack that a college coach will give you, and you basically are playing against grown men NBA competition. So I think
Yeah.
that's really that's one of the main differences I would say.
Yeah, LaMelo, when he was playing Lithuania, he didn't play all the minutes he wanted in the world, but if he went to a college program, they're almost forced to play your 5-star recruit almost. Like Coach Cal, when he gets someone like Tyrese Maxey and he's not playing well in practice, he might sit him for 5 minutes to start the game, but Coach Cal wants to win and they're more incentivized to get that money hit the for Coach Cal. So he needs his 5-star recruits to show up and play well.
Yeah, those college teams, they don't have as much depth as a professional league team. So
Yeah.
when you have a 5-star recruit, that's going to be your best player, and regardless of if they're performing well or have a bad attitude or whatever the case may be, you still got to play them because you got to win.
Yeah. With
And
G League or something, it's always next guy up. So there's a lot of G League players dying for a job in the NBA. And if Jalen Green isn't good, let's say, and he's not doing well in a starting role, like there's going to be another guard they're just going to find. It doesn't matter what your rank is once you get out of high school almost. So there's always a next guy up. There's people that are trying to get those jobs in the NBA. They're putting their life on the line, and yeah.
so the story at the forefront of the NFL news recently would be Dak Prescott's 5-year, $175 million contract that he is apparently not happy with. This would be the richest contract for a quarterback in the history of the NFL. And it really would be Dak's biggest win of his career if you look into it. I don't think he's really he have one playoff win. I don't
Yeah.
think he's really if he's going to get a deal like this, I think this is the best he's going to get. It's the best that's ever been offered to a quarterback, and I think that him being unhappy with it, whatever. I think he wants 45 million in the final year, and that was his proposal. So I think that's just a waste of time. I don't think he deserves to be able to uh, sort of complain about the numbers. I don't think he has any leverage to complain about it, being that he hasn't really won anything or have anything to show for it. So I think this is the best deal he's going to get, and I think he should just accept it for as it is.
Yeah, this is a great deal. He's going to be getting paid basically more than Russell Wilson, and he's probably half the player Russell Wilson is. But so with Dak, he's getting a monster contract. I don't know why they waited this long because it's insane to me that they paid their running back before him. They let Zeke uh, leverage against them, and they gave him 6 years, 90 million last year. I don't know why. When Zeke was complaining, they should have just traded him and threw him out the window because you cannot pay. It's pretty egregious to pay a running back 90 million for 6 years. They made
I
him
think
way more than Todd Gurley paid.
I think that scenario is part of the reason why Dak feels like he could reach for even more after being given this offer. Because I mean, he's probably talking to Zeke. They probably know that if they push hard enough, that they're going to get what they want, and Zeke certainly accomplished that. I think the difference between that and Dak is that Zeke really got market value. I think that another team would have paid him the same amount if he had really held out or whatever the case would be with that. But I don't think Dak would get this kind of offer anywhere else other than Dallas. I think he just needs to accept it for what it is.
Yeah, he's in a great situation. The Cowboys have really good offense. They're bringing in a new head coach. Like they were one game away from making the playoffs last year. I mean, why would you not accept this and try to go to maybe a worse situation? You should accept this. And you're getting paid more than a lot of players, maybe you are worse than. So
Yeah, he's definitely going to get paid way more than a lot of other players with the similar production. The Steelers last year had same record, 8-8. They basically platooned whatever it was, Duck Hodges and
Mason
uh,
Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph. Yeah, they ended up with the same record, and you could also argue that the Steelers are worse than the Cowboys. So I think that the fact that they were able to reach the same amount of wins with a worse team in a better division really shows that Dak hasn't done anything special. The Tennessee Titans reached the AFC Championship with Ryan Tannehill, and he got a new contract, right? I think he's being paid a decent amount, but it's nowhere near the richest contract in the history of the NFL.
Nope.
And they were better, and they made the playoffs and went far in the playoffs with Tannehill. The Bears went 8-8 also. They had Trubisky, which is the same record that Dak went. So
I
I think
feel
you can
like
really see that the market value for a player like Dak, you know, it really doesn't come anywhere close to what he really accomplished.
to what you said about Ryan Tannehill. Obviously, he was pretty solid in those playoff games, but do we really think? I mean, I think if Dak was the Titans quarterback, they could have reached the same spot because they just gave it to Henry every time and it worked. I mean, Ryan Tannehill had a good year. Don't get me wrong. Mariota was horrible at the beginning of the year, which made them switch to Tannehill. I mean, he did earn his contract down the stretch. I'm not going to lie there, but I think Dak's a much better player than Ryan Tannehill at this point. Dak's
Right, but I
still
think the
young.
same case can be made with Dak that can be made with Tannehill is that their running backs really are the bulk of their offense, and I mean, there's all those arguments that without Zeke, what is Dak? And I think the stats might show for it. I don't know how solid that is, but I think if you're gonna point out how effective Henry was, you got to point out how effective Zeke is and what that does for both of their quarterbacks.
Yeah, obviously a running game is the quarterback's best friend, but they paid Zeke so much money. Like thing with you at the point you attested to with Henry helping Tannehill. Yes, Zeke does help Dak. Our running back is a quarterback's best friend, but they gave Zeke, they paid him before Dak, and they paid him the most money. Even though I think they would be fine, they should have just traded Zeke, in my opinion, for a bunch of picks. And they like Tony Pollard a lot, and he had a good rookie season last year. So I don't see a difference if they have Tony Pollard in there as opposed to Zeke because their offensive line is so great, and that this offense is really dynamic. The Cowboys actually averaged the most yards per play last year. So, Will, if I told you that if I blindfolded you and I told you this quarterback has 97 touchdowns to only 35 interceptions in his first 4 years, what would you say to me?
I would think that quarterback is pretty good and that you should probably pay him.
Exactly. This is after his fourth year. I mean, okay, so he had an EA year this year. That was not a good year, but he's had Jason Garrett as his coach, and he's put up some good numbers. They led the league in yards per play. They went 13-3 his rookie year. Zeke was amazing. Dak was good. They have a really good team around them. So the situation Dak is in is great. So I don't know why he wouldn't take this contract.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Back to what I was saying before, that they really just don't have any leverage, or he doesn't really have any leverage to to use against this deal. It's the best deal that any quarterback has ever gotten. He'll
Yep.
be making the most money uh, in the NFL. I don't think, whatever he's complaining about the final year, whatever the case may be, guaranteed money. I don't know. I don't think it's worth it when you're already going to be the highest paid, and you basically haven't gone anywhere in the postseason.
Yeah, not many teams are in need of a quarterback if you think about it. Dak's going to be in the best situation. This is the best situation for him. Would you say, Will, do you think he's a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo? Because Jimmy Garoppolo set the market really high with his recent contract last year or 2 years ago.
I don't know. That is funny that you bring that up because they really serve the same purpose for their team. The teams they rely mainly on their run games. I think the 49ers defense is a lot better than the
Yeah,
Cowboys
Jimmy is a
defense,
better.
which probably is the reason why the 49ers were a much better team last year. But I don't know. I think if they're gonna pay him more than Jimmy, I think he should just accept that.
Definitely, I think he's a better player than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's younger too. Like Jimmy, he did nothing to earn that contract. He played a few good games for the Patriots, and then he tore his ACL when he got his contract. Like he did play well this year. He got them to the Super Bowl, but a lot of people could say, I mean, he didn't even. It was just like Tannehill. He kind of sat in the back seat and let the run game, the defense do its job. I think Dak is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo because Jimmy didn't even do anything to earn that contract. So why would Dak? If Dak feels like he's great, then he's definitely earned the money. I would say he's played well for 4 years. Jimmy, we had 1 year of film. Would you say that Dak is a better quarterback than per se Phil Rivers, who just got paid decently by the Colts?
Yeah, definitely. I think Philip Rivers, he had a terrible year last year, and well, Dak's contract is gonna be 10 million more per year, and
Yeah,
Rivers also only signed a 1 year deal.
yeah.
So I think there's some differences there. But yes, I would say that Dak is a lot better than Rivers at this point.
What about compare the Big Ben because he's second on this list. He's getting 34 million per year. In my opinion, I think I'd rather have Dak for this season at this point in Big Ben's career.
Yeah, the thing with Big Ben is how healthy is he? That's kind of been the question for him recently. I I think maybe if you just look at pure talent, Big Ben might have the edge on Dak a little bit, even at this point. But I think Dak's durability has been definitely a lot better than Ben at this point, and I think he deserves more. If you're going to pay a young player more, he definitely would deserve it.
Yeah. What about Jared Goff compared to Dak? I think I'd rather have Dak.
Yeah, I don't know the stats really. I think Dak is definitely in a better position, in a better system, and better team than Goff.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that might have something to do with it. I don't know.
What about Mr. Tom Brady down in Tampa Bay signing his contract at 43 years old? Would you rather have Dak or Brady at this point? I think I might give the slight edge to Dak. They're in similar situations.
I think well, if we're going to talk about who has proven it, I think
Obviously,
obviously
Brady.
it would be Brady, and I think that maybe that would give him some more value over Dak. But
Yes.
again, well, Dak is younger, so I think you have to take that into account, the length of his contract. So maybe I would rather have Dak, but I don't know, for 1 year, maybe I would go Tom Brady. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Brady wasn't that good last year. Obviously, he had an inferior supporting cast than he does now, but I don't know. I feel like Father Time's going to catch up to Tom this year. But if you think about it, Dak and Brady are in very similar situations. They both are going to get 35 million a year or whatever. But the Cowboys and Buccaneers are very similar, I'd say. Their defenses are pretty decent, maybe average, maybe a little above average. But the Buccaneers, they have really good wide receivers, just like the Cowboys. The Cowboys have Amari, Gallup, and Lamb now. But with the Buccaneers, they have no offensive line and they have no running game, and the Cowboys do have that. And I think most experts and people would say the Cowboys and Buccaneers both can go 9-7 and maybe make a wild card spot and maybe get kicked out after the first game. I don't think I think that's they're pretty close those teams, and I think Dak might have a better year than Brady.
Would you rather have Dak or Baker?
Probably Dak at this point because Baker, obviously, he had a number of issues last year. He threw a lot of interceptions, but I feel like I know what I'm getting with Dak compared to Baker. Baker was up his rookie year, down his second year. Dak, I feel like he's been pretty consistent with his numbers, and it's not always reflected on him, the Cowboys' success. Their defense wasn't that good last year, and you gotta remember he had Jason Garrett as his coach for 4 years, and even though he had Jason Garrett as his coach last year, they led the NFL in yards per play, as I stated earlier. I feel like I'm getting. I feel like I know what I'm getting from Dak. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. He has a good cast
Mhm.
around him. I could see it working better than Baker for this year and Brady.
I think one thing that's worth mentioning for this discussion is that Dak versus playoff teams last year, he wasn't very good. Week 4 at the Saints, only 212 yards, one pick, no touchdowns. They ended up losing. Week 7 against the Eagles, only 213 yards, one touchdown, one pick. They won, but I think the rushing attack really uh, pulled them through that game. So week 12 at the Patriots, only 212 yards, one pick, lost again. Week 16 at Philadelphia, two interceptions, no touchdowns, and they lost, which also was the game that kicked them out of the playoffs. So I think if you're going to look at Dak's success, you got to look at his struggles versus playoff teams last year, especially.
Yeah, Dak, he didn't play well against playoff teams last year. But is everyone's forgetting that Tom Brady didn't either. You know, he lost to the Ravens, he lost to the Texans. It looked like every team, every pretty good team, Brady did not perform well. You could say, well, his supporting cast wasn't good, blah blah blah. He had a great defense, Brady. That's what propelled them last year, as we all saw. And he didn't play well against the Titans. At this point, like Dak and Brady are both similar, I think, for this season. And we'll
Do you
just
think
see who has a
Dak?
better year. I think I give the slides to Dak, as I said before. I think he'll have more
Do you
yards
think
and more.
Dak? Do you think Dak without Jason Garrett will be better than Brady without Bill Belichick? Because it's the opposite effect on both of them, I would think.
Well, with the pandemic happening, it's going to be hard for new teams to get into a groove in the season, and they're losing valuable time in camp, meeting with their new coaches, getting ready with their playbook and all their new players and everything. Dak with his coach is Mike McCarthy, right? So, and
Yeah.
Brady's is Bruce Arians. Arians is probably Arians is probably the better coach, I would say, at this point. I feel like they're both gonna have their struggles and they're both gonna have their highs. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that they both maybe miss the playoffs or maybe both barely get in. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with both those teams. But
It's going
definitely
to be the
teams with new
expanded
coaches
it's the
are
expanded
gonna
playoff
struggle.
format this year also, right?
Yes, there's 7 teams.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely going to help both of those teams probably in order to reach the playoffs.
Yeah, they could bowl. I mean, and like the Eagles, they made it splash this offseason, acquiring Darius Slay for like a bag of chips. But the Cowboys, they added Lamb. They did lose Byron Jones. I think that's a pretty big loss for them. But the Eagles and Cowboys NFC East, it's a 2 team race. So either of them could win. And in like the last 10 years, the same winner the year before like didn't repeat. So the Eagles won last year. Maybe that could favor the Cowboys with the way that luck or whatever goes.
Hmm.
They both play in the NFC. The Bucks, they don't have an easy schedule. Neither do the Cowboys, really. So it's pick your poison with Dak or Brady, but Dak needs to accept this contract, get to camp, and prove that he's worth this money this year. This is since he got paid, if he gets paid. He's got a lot on his plate. He has a good roster around him once again, a new coach that's probably arguably better than Jason Garrett. So we'll just have to wait and see if Dak can propel this team above the Eagles because that's what they need to do right now.
Yeah, it's gonna put the pressure on them, especially if they reach this deal and they get going. The season starts on time, everything's fine. It's really gonna be on him in order to definitely make the playoffs, win the division, and everything you need to do as a top-paid franchise quarterback.
So with all this talk about the NFL season happening and if we think Dak's better than Brady or whatnot, the NFL. So this tweet by Tom Pelissero on Twitter that the clubs they're receiving rule changes in the proposal, and it looks like instead of an onside kick, you can go for it it would be 4th and 15 at your own 25-yard line, and it looks like that idea is growing and people like that idea. And you can only do this 2 times a game, by the way, so you can't just like do it every time. I think this is way better than an onside kick. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is after a score, after a touchdown, whatever, they go and they just instead of kicking the ball, it would be just run a play from the 25. Yeah, I think that's exciting. I think the likelihood of that uh being completed is a lot higher than an onside kick.
Yeah, but
So I
we basically
think
never see onside kicks anymore.
right. So I don't know. I don't mind it.
It's good that they set a boundary too with this rule because you can only do it twice a game. And if you could just do this like every time, then it'd be kind of that'd be kind of interesting, kind of stupid actually. But so 4th and 15 from your own 25-yard line, and it's not, it's definitely hard to complete. It's 4th and 15, but it's better than an onside kick to me. If my team's down 2 scores, like why not try it in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the newest NFL rules that were put into play this season, whether it's the reviewing pass interference, stuff like that, doesn't really go well when the NFL tries to change too many things. So I think this is a little bit different than that. I think it might be, maybe more fun, more exciting, but I don't know. I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It doesn't hurt the game in any way, shape, or form. So thank you for listening to this episode of the show. Please leave a rating and review, and follow us at Bona Fide Scrubs on Twitter and on Instagram at the Bona Fide Scrubs. Thank you.